Hello, guys and girls, and welcome to episode 82 of the FReality Podcast. This is a weekly VR, AR, and AMR talk show, live streamed every Saturday on YouTube, Facebook, and on Twitch. You can tune into the show live at 7 p.m. in Europe, 6 p.m. in the UK, and 12 midday in Central US. You can also check out the audio version, which is available on iTunes, SoundCloud, and on Anchor. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, leave us a nice review on iTunes. That'd really help us out. We are here live from the show floor at PAX East. We're live right now, but the actual show for you guys and girls will be pre-recorded. However, we will try and jump into the chat and interact with you as much as we can. Obviously, we've been here busy at the show floor. It's been a crazy couple of days. How are you guys holding up?
I'm still alive. Yeah. How about you?
I've been cramming 2 to 3 parties in a night, and it's been a very active session. Lots of physicality.
So I should introduce you to everyone, of course. This is Zimtok5, the all-night party guy. He was up till, 4 a.m. this morning?
4 a.m. Yeah, 4 a.m. It's all right. It's been a lovely time. We've done a lot of bonding in the VR community. You know, our brethren have come together and glued ourselves with alcohol.
And of course, Nathie, my brother from another mother. How have you been, dude? How has it been for you so far?
I've been sleeping a lot.
Well, I'm very jealous because I haven't. Like, literally since the plane has landed, it has been flat out work, but it's been great. And we should actually say thank you as well. We should say thank you to Oculus for inviting us all here, paying for the flights, paying for the accommodation, and being awesome hosts for us while we're here at the show. They've looked after us very well. So thank you to Oculus for doing that. We really appreciate it. So in today's show, we're going to be giving you our first impressions of the Oculus Rift S. We're going to be then talking about the Oculus Quest, and then of course, all the games that we've tried on the show floor so far. So I'm sure you guys and girls are going to really enjoy this one. And let's get straight into it. So in terms of Rift S, let's just quickly go around very quick first impressions from you put the headset on. What were your initial impressions of that headset?
First thought for me was, having been a PSVR player for a long time, the way that the back adjustment works is far smoother an action than I thought. So like the whole baseball cap on, in, and 3 to 4 seconds on time. So I was really happy with that. The other thing, the counterpoint to that, is hair being pressed down and then the top strap holding your hair down. So like I was fishing with my fingers in underneath the thing, trying to get my hair out from underneath the compression spot there. I know you don't have that problem for me, Mike, but for me, that was like the balancing point. So yeah, very smooth interaction with the Halo head strap. So that was my first impression.
So your first impressions were all about the comfort of the headset more than anything else?
And to be honest, that tends to follow. Like when it comes to headsets, for me, comfort is number one, ahead of every other thing. Yeah.
Great. Okay. What about you then, Nathie?
Oh, and also content is also important. next to comfort. Comfort for me is on number 2. Like games are on number 1. I can handle. Now I do have a lot of hair though. Might be an issue. I don't know. So yeah, are we talking about the comfort here, or what are we aiming for?
Your first impression.
My first impressions on the comfort. I played it for I used it for around 20 minutes because I had to catch up with the podcast. You know, I didn't really have time to check it out yet. So for the sake of science, I tried it out, and I think the comfort is awesome. You know, I love the PlayStation VR. I also like the Samsung Odyssey. You know, comfort wise, that's Halo strap. I'm a big fan of that, and it also, because my hair is going up. It's always behind it, so I will never ruin my hair in some way. So that's a plus.
You guys are like talking about your hair and looking at me, and I'm like,
it was like the girliest.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mike.
Yeah. And I was doing my nails while I was in the headset, and it was really easy because the nose gap, I realized, wasn't such a problem. No, sorry. But no, Mike, I'm curious. Like, what was the first thing that struck you when you put that?
Okay, so like you guys both mentioned the comfort, and I think that's valid points. Like the headset is super comfortable to wear. For me, like my first impressions of the headset, I was just really, really impressed with the Oculus Insight system, like the inside-out tracking. I think that was one of my biggest concerns about this headset going into it. There are other concerns I had as well, which I'm sure we'll go into later, but I was just really impressed with how solid it was. It feels better than a 2-sensor setup with Rift, but maybe not quite as good as a 3-sensor setup. So it's like somewhere in the middle, I feel like. But for those of you out there that don't have a Rift already, like you're getting an incredible experience like straight out of the box with this. And I think that's the thing that impressed me the most, like out of my first impressions using the headset.
You know, you're talking about the inside-out tracking, the pass-through, you had described it to me, whereas having seen the kind of AHA style that we'd seen before, now seeing the black and white view, I don't know if you've had a chance to see this yet, but there's a really weird thing that's going on. When you're looking through the headset, it's some kind of like, I feel bigger, but I look smaller at the same time. It's really strange, and I think what it's doing is it's because it's somehow mathematically, scientifically occluding like this bubble of an astronaut's helmet that you're wearing so that, you know, the controllers don't get too close. It does some kind of like zoom in, zoom out thing, so you feel like you're playing like one of those games like that F1 fighter game we were talking about where the scale was all mucked up. That's what it feels like to me, but it looks really cool, and definitely drawing the peripheral outline, it's like drawing a finger through the sand. It is the most satisfying way that they could have presented that. It feels so good.
It's like being a giant in a dollhouse, but still fit in the house itself without going through the roof. That's how it feels.
And I think the flight game you were talking about was Flying Aces that had the weird effect. But yeah, you're right. But the only headset I could try the pass-through mode on was the Quest. Did you try it on the Rift?
You have to enable it. You have to enable it in the experimental settings. So it's like there's about 8 or 9 different experimental settings that are available. So definitely tinker with them. They're fun. There's other ones as well. I will save my other comments.
Yeah.
Scoops.
I know Oculus were a little bit concerned about us going into the settings, and this is probably exactly why. But I didn't get to try that pass-through mode on the Rift S, but I have tried it on Quest, and from what you've described, it's almost identical system, I think. Black and white, grainy-looking image, but stereoscopic as well.
I had a weird thing that it's worth talking about, because on the Quest, I found drawing the border in Guardian, one of the things I wanted to point out was it doesn't have to be a square. You could draw yourself in a nice little star-shaped pattern if you want to. And I really like that. So if you have a person standing there like we do, we typically have an attendant watching us so we don't go through the glass pane window. In addition to the Guardian system, which works well, I could draw a line around the person, you know? It doesn't have to be a kind of a set shape. And then it calculates your kind of net area and says, oh, you're going to be playing standing or you're going to be playing room scale. But what I found to be odd was on Rift S, when I was setting up the Guardian system for myself, I had to use nose peeking to tell where my line was. Like it wasn't giving me the overlay on the environment from first time setup. So I don't know if that was a bug on these engineering samples that we're using or why it didn't trigger, because I wasn't getting the same kind of satisfactory draw line in the sand with the finger. It was weird. But I wonder if any of you can replicate that when you're, in the booth or whatever later on.
I think quick heads up, these Rift S's and Quests that are here are all prototypes. So there might still be some stuff that they are working on, or because you can see it, like there's this number on the front that tells you that it's still a prototype.
And they're all serialized, of course, so they don't go walking because there's thousands of people.
Although they don't give us some kind of prototype that is not, because they're coming out soon.
It's not so far off. But the thing that they cautioned for me, because I noticed something with the glove that I'm wearing now, part of the old outfit, and for those audio listeners, it's just a normal biking glove. Gripping the touch control like quite tightly in Beat Saber and things like that caused the panel to slide down. That has never happened to me on the original revision of the Touch, and Touch 2.0 was having that problem. And one of the attendants said, engineering sample, and I got the vibe, we've actually sorted that problem. So I'll be very interested to see the kind of 2.0 edition of Touch, the production model, and see if they've sorted the battery door. Otherwise, that's going to be a pain for me.
Yeah, so the magnet isn't that strong. So when you get a little sweaty, you kind of pull it with your hand. So there's some, you get some grip there, and then you slide the panel out, and then you lose it. These controllers that come with the Quest and the Rift S, because those are the same ones, they are not as solid as the Touch ones. I feel like they're a little more on the material-wise, at least.
I find that they're a little bit smaller, smaller.
Yeah, they are smaller.
The thumbstick is smaller as well, but I've got like baby-sized hands, so it's fine for me.
Yeah, same here. It's okay.
Yeah.
Like it's okay. But do you find the 20% shrink? It feels like Honey Shrank My Kids, right? And then they shrunk it down by 20%. For me, it's okay. Like you, decent kind of normal size hands. But if you're a mammoth, it might be a problem. I don't know.
Yeah. Maybe. And it's also worth noting that these controllers are going to be the standard controllers going forward. So if you've got an original Rift and you break your controllers, then these are the ones you're going to have to buy as replacements. They will work with the original Rift. However, original touch controllers won't work with Quest and Rift S.
So on the hand point, one of the things Terry Wood, who we had on the last podcast, mentioned, because he's got big Italian hands, is his hand actually goes past the control to the point where, say, his pinky is completely off and he's holding it with his first 3 fingers. And so it feels kind of awkward for him. And I didn't catch his vibe. If this is the same length, I think it is in terms of touch and at 1 and 2.0. So that's one, if you've got big hands, maybe try it out in a shop somewhere, before taking the dip. But it's really on parity, I think, with the original touch controls in terms of size.
There must be a reason why they made it smaller. So maybe there are more people that fit this size than the previous one.
Asian market.
Maybe. Who knows?
I also do like the fact that there is a standard going forward. They're standardizing across headsets. I do like that. So you can move from Quest to Rift S and feel completely comfortable swapping between the 2 headsets. So I like that. So we talked about the controllers, we talked about the comfort a little bit, but let's talk about some of the real concerns that some of the community have had about the Rift S in particular. And one of the biggest concerns was this 80 hertz refresh rate, right? We've been told from the very beginning that 90 hertz was the standard for VR. It's been drummed into us since day one. We've hit this magic number now, it's 90 hertz. Anything below this, you're not going to have a great experience, particularly on PC. We understand those sacrifices on mobile with Go and Quest that, run at 72 hertz because it's mobile hardware. You understand that. But when you've got a PC that's got a 2080 Ti, you think, well, I want to be pushing the maximum frames. However, with that said, I didn't notice it. Did you guys notice it?
You made a comment of this in your video of all this yesterday, and I watched that, and I was like, I'm going to look this morning specifically for that. I found in Asgard's Wrath, if you look down, the shadow that casts on the ground looked like a real life shadow. That's how convincing it was. I did not notice any, I didn't passively notice. And when I actively looked, it looked smooth. Yeah. So, and 80 hertz, again, I said it before, I bought into why they made the changes. And I really do still feel that on a Go, 72 has never been a problem for me. So 80, I don't know. Maybe I'm just of that age. Maybe, there's a 16-year-old kid out there who's going to be like, this is so terrible. But for me, perfect. It's fine. Unnoticeable.
I mean, I never really experienced the difference between a Go or a Rift and that's like 72, right? That's way lower. And I don't really see any difference. It's both as good as, I think there's a misconception of what the experience is like. And I feel like the people that are concerned don't completely know what the difference means in what way and what effect it has. It's not something visual you can really see. It's there, but you don't see it.
I'm curious though, with super sampling, why? I mean, do we have a headset that's running 120 or 200 hertz? You know what I mean? What would the effect feel like? Yeah. Would it feel like those newfangled TVs that you look at? God, I just said newfangled. Please strike that from the record. If you look at one of those TVs, it almost feels like too smooth. I remember it coming out with was it The Hobbit or something like that, where they had the new frame rate, and you're looking at it, you're like, it just doesn't look right. Like something's wrong. There's interpolation. So I'm really curious for a headset to be, pushing 150 hertz and see what that feels like. I wonder if there would be any benefit to humans, or is the eye just not? I wish we had Rowdy here. Rowdy, miss you, dude.
Well, another example is a lot of people own a TV and it's running on 60 hertz, and then you go to a movie. And it's 24 hertz because that's the movie standard, right? Yeah, it is. And if you ask people oh, do you don't see it? No. You don't see it. Even when I had my Oculus Rift DK1, I was having fun. And I wasn't oh, I need more. It doesn't matter, it doesn't matter. But I do understand that people are they hear this whole thing popping up. And, if you're still not sure after what we said, then try it out and then you can, but I'm sure there are maybe a few people that might, because they have a certain then but it's rare. I think it's very rare.
I think if you did a Pepsi challenge, right, 90 hertz and 80 hertz, I think you'd be hard pushed to tell the difference. And like you said, at the end of the day, you're in the game, you're having a great experience. And I would just say, put it out there for the people that did have concerns. There was a lot of people on Reddit as well looking at the specs and being really worried about this headset. And I just think overall, you shouldn't be, right?
With any headset, I think every headset that is on the market now has a high enough standard in terms of hertz.
Yeah. So that's the 80 hertz in a nutshell.
Yep.
But let's move on to the resolution then, because we know the resolution is 1280 by 1440 pixels per eye. It's using an LCD panel. It's a very pixel dense LCD panel, like we've seen on the PSVR. Very nice clarity in terms of image in the display. Same deal with the Rift S as well. What did you guys think of the resolution?
Sorry, what headset are we talking about now?
Rift S still.
So Rift S, I really liked the bump. I would say that if anyone remembers this, and someone had to remind me of this, when we jumped from DK2 to CV1, it was a bit of a disappointment out of the box. You're like, wow, is that all that's there in the step? It felt like 25% in terms of an improvement. This feels like 15 to 20% of an improvement. Like, it feels less of a step forward in terms of core on paper stats, but the overall experience for me is, and I think, Mike, you're sitting on the other side of the table to this. The overall experience for me, as Rift is my daily driver, I would happily, 2 years on, sell on my Rift or keep my Rift as a backup and buy this new headset. Like, that would be my recommendation to people, because I think the comfort factors they've added with the head strap, with the tracking and the fact there's no cameras, the ease of setup, all these things add together in a package that's actually a really nice kind of push forward. But it's a balanced push forward. It's not a Pimax push forward, which is very pointed in saying, I'm going to give you this one piece of the product. I think Oculus have done a very good job of broadening that. And it's a slight step forward. But is it as comfortable as some of the other people we've heard reporting the headset? Yeah. I'm actually impressed at how good it was to feel to throw it on, you know? And if the only gripe I have about it is a slight bit of contrast of an issue and the hair thing, I'm well happy. So yeah, I'm coming away from a day and a half of playing with this thing. It's a good headset.
What about resolution for you?
I mean, for a revision, it's fine. You know, this is not the 2.0 headset. It's not the next gen. You know, it's more like an updated version of the Oculus Rift. You know, if you only owned a Rift and you have never really tried any other headsets, then you will see the difference. I mean, when I went from my Rift to the Go, because I feel like the Go is kind of like the similar resolution, or the same almost. And you can see it's sharper, you know. It's nice. But in the end, you know, I don't believe that resolution is really going to give you a better experience. Looking at the difference between the Rift and the Rift S, that, you know, if you would stay with your Rift, you're going to have a fun time playing a game. If you play with the Rift S,
I don't know.
it's going to be the same. It's not going to change.
What about, like, I mean, I noticed as the benchmark, Stormland. Stormland in the Rift, I always felt a little bit held back. The detail in the Rift S for me is now better. So although we're taking, and we haven't touched really on this in depth yet, but the contrast is probably the one noticeable step backwards that I've noticed. Things are that little touch grayer. You pick this headset up, like what you said, Mike, if you're a new consumer, you pick this thing up, you won't know. But if you come from a Vive, you'll notice. If you come from a Rift, after a couple of minutes in the headset, you'll just forget about it. But otherwise, it's a really solid offering that way. And I think, you know, it's one of those headsets that when you see it comparing to the Rift, I'm going to have a difficult time going back to the Rift now, the original Rift. I am going to, like, the Go optics, the thing for me that is the main part, and I wonder if you noticed this, the sweet spot for me, we've now reached the threshold of, like, the sweet spot is good enough. Because even the Rift is a little positional. Sometimes it'll be off your face or whatever. This one's got just enough play. I would say it feels like enough of, like, the size of a quarter, an American quarter, where you can have your eye in there and you've got perfect sharp view in that space. And so I actually think now they've nailed sweet spot on this headset, and I'm really happy with that.
I think that in the end, for me, it's kind of like, if you haven't tried it, you're not going to miss it. That's it. And if there's like a Rift S somewhere and you try it, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, maybe. But as long as you haven't tried it and you're not really that worried about resolution, I don't think you're going to miss out. I don't think you're missing out at this moment. Again, you know, I don't believe that resolution is going to really make your experience far superior based on this difference between the resolution. So I don't know about you, but.
Well, I think, you know, the resolution is really the only reason why you would upgrade to this headset, right? Unless, you know, you don't have sensors mounted permanently and you have to set them up each time. Maybe, you know, saving up some setup time, maybe that's another good reason to push forward. But other than that, there's no real other reason to upgrade, in my opinion. However, with that said, just like you, Zim, I don't want to play Asgard's Wrath and Stormland on any other headset.
Yeah.
So although I say that, I say it with a caveat with my own experiences, I would want one playing forward. But then again, I'm a hardcore enthusiast. That's the difference.
What you're basically saying is that the ecosystem Oculus created is forcing you to go to the next headset. Because that's what happens. Because in the end, this Rift, the warranty people have, is going to run out soon, and then you have to upgrade anyway. So what we're talking about here, all these specs, it's great, but if you are really into this ecosystem and you spend so much money on all these games and all these gadgets, you're gonna buy it anyway. So all these people fighting on Reddit right now saying like, hey, I don't want to buy it because, it's not really an upgrade. You're going to do it anyway. Or you're going to, maybe they jump onto another ship, a different brand. Possibly, because then, you have the Pimax, the X-Stall, and the all these other, high-end headsets. But, if your warranty runs out, you're screwed. And you're going to buy the new one, and then you have like another 2 years warranty again. And that's why they didn't restock, because this way, people will roll into the new lineup.
But so, they've obviously replaced it. So you don't have a choice, right? In a lot of places, Rift is sold out, and your only choice is to turn to a friendly Rift scalper like Zim. Because I actually ended up buying a European edition of the Rift, new. Now just arrived at home yesterday. But the only purpose is, like the stock market, those things are off the shelf. Someone 6 months from now is going to pay a little bit more for another headset. Only problem is warranty. That's the only issue, though.
Zim warranty.
Yeah, Zim warranty. I think my prediction here is that most people will buy this headset even if they don't like it right now, and they will maybe learn to like it. I think that's what's going to happen. But there will be a small percentage now that sees what happened with this Oculus Rift S, how they announced it, and they kind of feel like they might want to now, support a different brand. And there's so many headsets out there right now, I feel like with the Oculus Rift S and the way they, threw it onto the market, I feel like there is now more competition for the other headsets. Because first, the Oculus Rift, great headset. There wasn't much out there that was better, and now since it's they downgraded it slightly, I feel like there's now chance to buy other headsets that come really close to what the Rift S does. Of course, you have these 5 cameras, but on the other side, if you played mixed reality with 2 cameras on the front, it works fine. It's just that if you spend a lot of money into this ecosystem, I don't think you're gonna jump onto another headset that uses Steam or a Vive part or a Windows Store or whatever. That's the thing. It's just for the really hardcore, users that are gonna stay. And for consumers, yes, I totally agree. Great headset. But as a consumer, there are more headsets out there that you could also buy. It's not the Rift as being the best consumer headset right now, in my opinion. You can even spend less money and still have a fun experience. Most people want to play Beat Saber. Do you need 5 cameras for Beat Saber? I don't think so.
No, and you're absolutely right. There are plenty of different options out there. The Samsung Odyssey, again, is a fantastic Windows mixed reality headset, and it converted my opinion on that whole platform. You've got Pimax doing their thing. You've got HP with their new Windows mixed reality headset. You've got Vive Cosmos coming up in the very near future with its inside-out tracking, but that's going to have potentially high-resolution displays, 2160 by 2160, which is this new magical number that we've heard that is really exciting. So there's plenty of options out there, but I think, as a newcomer to VR, this headset does make things very accessible, just like the Windows mixed reality platforms. But I think you're right. You've got to really consider the ecosystem that you're going to invest in long term to choose which brand and which headset you align with.
Because in the end, it is $400, and they will drop it for sure. They will. Let's say if you are a consumer and you're still on the line buying a headset, the only reason why I would buy the Rift S or a Quest or a Go is because Oculus is funding most of the games and no other company is doing it. So if you're really, this game head and you want to play some good titles and you want to be, awarded for buying this headset and still get nice games for the upcoming 2 years and not get bored by your headset and put it on the shelf, the best option is to go for the Rift. But then even you have these dry seasons on Oculus Home where there's nothing to play, but it's the best option in terms of software, I would say.
And it goes back to your point about how content, again, is king, right? It's a very important thing. And I do find it very interesting when you look at competitors on the market and you look at other headsets like Pico Neo and these that literally have like no games for them. Like there's almost no reason to buy the equipment. The equipment technically is like, you're like, oh, maybe this would go shoulder to shoulder, and then you give it a go and you're like, there's no way I would purchase this thing. So I think it's really interesting, and you get a very warm, at least I do, get a very warm feeling now anytime I see Oculus Studios come up at the beginning of a game. They have maintained a consistency, a flavor of quality. And they don't say much about it. I haven't heard much about the internal quality standards that Oculus have in terms of that studio or feedback, in the same way that we've heard from, let's say, PlayStation and the grueling QA that they have to get a developer onto the store. But I have to say, they've done a great job over the years, now that we're into 1.5 territory, of having software that's landing on the platform, that is exclusive to the platform, that works beautifully with their equipment. I mean, it's a wonderful environment to buy into, to be honest.
It's the best option in terms of where you can like play your games, but also not. It's also the worst option because in the end, like Oculus is funding all these games, but if we have seen the market right now for the last 2-3 years, there's almost no, let's say, AAA developer that really funded their own title and brought it to the platform. And this has been going on for like 2-3 years. And it's not a good sign that Oculus needs to spend money to make all these games happen. Because on the PlayStation, if you use that as an example, developers do it themselves, and it works and they also sell. But as right now, if you are a developer and you make a game for, let's say, the Rift S, it's kind of risky. If you make one for the Quest, better chance of selling something. But PC right now, it's kind of tricky.
I think you made a good point there about PlayStation and developers going it solo with PlayStation titles. But you got to remember, like, PlayStation is killing it right now, and they're the biggest platform out of everyone. Yeah. What was it, like over 4 million headsets sold now in terms of PlayStation? So, I think if we get an announcement this year that PS VR 2 is coming, it's going to be a very exciting time for everyone. But let's go back on track a little bit and sort of bring it back to Rift S and talk about the tracking, because I sort of touched on it at the very, very beginning that the inside-out tracking from Oculus Insight was very impressive. I really tried to mess it up and test its limits. I was swapping things behind my back, which I just didn't even think would be possible with this kind of system. And it's tricky. Like, it works 80% of the time. Doesn't work all the time, but
did you find that it when it didn't work, did you feel that was a software limitation? I mean, do you think the system was capable of doing it based on what you were testing, or because I found in Asgard's Wrath, try to pass a blade behind your hands, I don't think that the game is necessarily adopting that, because if you turn slightly and then your kind of hand is there, it'll do it. So I can reach my hand right the way around my back, and I'm like, oh, flicking a blade or whatever. And it is smooth, but I was wondering, like, from the test that you did, what was your take on it? Do you think it's a system limitation, or is it rather the software that's running on that system?
No, it's a system limitation. So that example you gave with Asgard's Wrath, at some point you were like looking at the hand, so that's fine.
Yeah, I know it's back.
Yeah. So the way I tested it was in Oculus Home. I got like a really long object, right? It was like actually a coat rack, and I held it at the base. So then I took the base, so I could see the tip of it up here, and then I was slowly moving it backwards, and I was seeing the tip and making small movements and seeing if it was tracked. And for the most part, it did. Like above my head, behind my back, everything. It was only when it's right in the square of your lower back, that's when it gets occluded and it can't do it. But there are occasions where the software must make up for it somehow, the loss of tracking, and calculate what you're doing. And so I was able to pass the coat rack from behind my back to one hand to the other. Like I said, 80% of the time it worked, 20% of the time it didn't. But what we learned from that was that this tracking system is good enough.
Also, did you find, like, I was worried that, again, I call it the astronaut's helmet of tracking, because when you get it close enough, some developers, like Vacation Simulator and stuff, will phase out your hand so you don't bring your hand too close. But what I found was in the applications that don't do that, you can actually bring the controllers almost close enough to touch the headset, and they're tracking you almost all the way there, which I found really impressive. And I found there was a discernible difference between Quest and S. S, you can get closer and still be tracking.
Yeah, I think it's as you said, good enough. That doesn't sound like it's perfect, but it's solid. Exactly. And the thing is, as long as you just play your game like a normal person and you're not gonna do this slow-mo and it's like, oh, I'm gonna put something behind my back super slow, then yeah, no, it's not gonna work. But if you just do fast movements, it's fine. It's fine. There is one thing that I do want to say is that it sounds like from your experience that there is just a dead spot.
Yeah.
And this is maybe not gonna disappear, but there is this spot that you just know after playing for a while, like, okay, that's where I should not put my controller. Yeah. Problem fixed. It was, for at least for you then. In a way.
It was really interesting. I watched an interview with Ben Lang and Jason Rubin. Ben Lang from Road to VR. He did a really great interview with Jason Rubin about the Rift S tracking, and Jason Rubin made a really solid point. And he was saying even with a 3-sensor tracking setup, the controllers will be occluded when they're right in front of you. And he said that you're not looking at them at that point, so it doesn't really make any sense. Of course, with Rift S, the controllers are occluded when they're right behind your back, which generally in game doesn't happen anyway. So he regards Oculus Insight as a superior tracking system to 3 sensors. I don't personally agree with that, but I think he makes an interesting point. But let's move on to IPD, because this was another big issue. Very important. And the issue was that they moved from hardware adjustment slider to a software-based IPD adjustment. And people were really concerned, including me, that sits on the very lower end of the IPD spectrum, that we were going to be basically locked out of the ecosystem. Like you say, we've invested in this ecosystem, and now we can't actually use a headset to play our games anymore. Like, that would really suck. And many people were upset about that, and I completely get why. I was concerned as well. However, I was able to look, and from what I saw, the IPD range of the Rift S was 58 millimeters to 72 millimeters, which is actually pretty decent range. I sit around sort of 59, 60, and for the most part, I had a great time in the headset. Didn't have any issues. But what about you guys?
So we're talking about digital IPD here, right?
Exactly.
Not with a slider. You could do it with a slider before, like that's something physical, and this is like in software.
Yeah, exactly. And you actually manage this through the system dashboard on your PC now, not in the headset.
What was the gradation on the system? I think it's 0.5 millimeter grades, as in you can go plus, and it hops up. I don't think it's 0.1 of a millimeter that you can adjust it in. And I think that's software locked down from what I could see. Because again, it's not a digital slider. I think it jumps from 63.5 to 64 to 64.5,
And to be honest, I didn't look at the increments, or I can't remember what the increments were. So yeah, I can't answer that question. But I think for the most part, the people that were concerned about IPD with the Rift S, I think you're going to be fine.
But no, hang on. So you've seen in the software the range it can go, right? Is that necessarily is that backed up by what can actually be done by the lens distortion? What I'm saying is, that assumes that there is a linear distortion curve that's happening that's equally as effective at either end of the spectrum. That's not necessarily the case. So I'm very, very interested, as a guy who sits smack in the middle. I'm a 64 millimeter eye guy, which is great for me, but not great for people who need testing. We need to find some test subjects, I think. But what is it going to mean in the wild? People who are at the peripheral edge of that, what is that going to, what does it compare going from a Rift to a Rift S? And is that person now in complaint territory? Even though the software supports it, maybe they're not satisfied. And that's what I'm really keen on hearing, because although the numbers are on there on paper, I'm nervous that given what the product teams have said, Nate and others, what is that experience going to be like? Are people really going to feel a little bit like hard done by? It's got to be hard sitting in that range. But I mean, again, the numbers speak for themselves. You sit on the low end of the spectrum. You had a positive experience. Anything in that? I mean, when you say that, is there anything you would call out to the audience that you noticed that stood out to you, or it was just not discernible at all? It was just equal on par with Rift?
Yeah, I think it was on par with Rift, to be honest. I think the thing that happens when your IPD isn't adjusted properly, everything seems a little bit off. It causes eye strain. It can cause nausea if you're new to VR, but I didn't have any of that with the Rift S. So, and that, along with the other things we've talked about, the other concerns I had, has kind of sold me on the Rift S as a headset. I did have serious concerns about it before coming here, but I think most of those concerns have been alleviated from having hands-on time with it.
Nathan, what's your IPD?
My IPD is, I think it's 64, 65, in between that range.
Super close, yeah.
So for me, it was never really a problem. So what you're saying is like, it's not really blurry. It's sharp when you look into this sweet spot. So if you're an all-round consumer and you buy this headset, then you should be fine. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, I think so. Like, I don't know the specs of the original Rift IPD range off the top of my head, unfortunately, to compare it. But I think it's pretty solid. If you sit on the outskirts, then maybe you want to go for another headset. If you're 74 or 56, then I think it's going to be too far out for you to have a pleasurable experience. But really, that 58 to 72 is a pretty wide range.
So is digital, like a digital IPD, as good as a physical IPD?
Personally, I prefer physical IPDs. I think you see that instant change, whereas you're doing this with the headset off. I didn't see any sort of calibration with lines lining up like you had with the original Rift to get it right. So you must have to go to an optician and find out what your IPD is from a professional to then input it into the software, maybe, because I haven't seen that calibration in the software anywhere.
Also, with the original Rift, it's like the slider, and it tells you in the tutorial how to do that, but now it's in the software, so it's more of a bigger step for people to now go into their computer and do it there. So I feel like it became a more complicated thing instead of became easier to do.
Exactly, and especially if you've got friends and family over and you're swapping between different people in the headset, you're going to have to go into the software and adjust it each time.
Why don't we have IPD, Netflix profiles for the people who use your headset? Right? Why do we have to swap it back and forth? Because it feels today like my wife hopping in my car and adjusting my seat and mirror, and every time I go back in, it's like, God damn it, you got such small eyes, and it's like, we just switch this back. Why couldn't we implement a simple profile that would just remember a setting? You click on it and boom. And then maybe even have a custom library to say these are the titles that I've recently played, instead of having all of the... I'm trying to think of a real condescending game that she could be playing a lot of. I can't even think of an example. Well, there goes my joke.
As long as Oculus educates people the right way with maybe a video that they watch up front, or telling people in the store what the IPD is all about, what that means before they buy, then that would be highly appreciated.
Wait, hang on. You just made a point about videos. I'm so glad that putting this headset on, I didn't have to do any, like, there were a couple of pain tutorial steps, but there was no videos. And I actually liked the departure from videos, because before it felt like, okay, here's the 20 minutes of videos that I'm going to watch someone do the thing, then I'm going to do the thing. It didn't feel efficient. Now with the Guardian system the way it is, it's very easy. I mean, it's like a 2-minute setup. It's literally like 2 minutes.
Yeah. I think just on Amazon, everywhere, the IPD should be in the description, just to be there, and also with a quick explanation of what it is. And also when people buy the headset, it's in the manual, it's in... Yeah. Just explain, because IPD, we're talking about IPD, we know what it is, but if you go here and ask people, what an IPD is? They're like, well, what is that? Is that a UFO? What is that?
It sounds like something you put, it's like a car bomb or something.
Well, usually I just say it's the space between your eyes. That's all you need to know.
Yeah, but I wonder what Oculus's formal return policy is based on IPD concerns. Because the Go, I know, I ran a competition with the Go. Someone won it, and they're like, I can't use this. I'm outside the range. I'm at 72. This thing is no good for me. And that was my first introduction to it's that bad. It's not just slightly uncomfortable or slightly out of focus. I know for some people it's a total showstopper. So I wonder if Oculus are, let's say, appreciating that in their return policy.
Oculus, tell us. Let us know in the comments.
So yeah, that is Rift S. I think we've talked enough about Rift S. So let's move on to the Quest. Let's talk about the Quest, because I think the Rift S definitely has its place. I think it's a good headset, but really the darling in my eyes is the Quest. And I think as well, although I love the Quest, and I'm sure you guys probably feel the same way about it, I think we've got to set some expectations here, because there's some people out there that think the Quest is basically a Rift S mobile. That's not the case. Please, set your expectation levels appropriately, because, although you're going to be able to play some Rift games on Quest, they're not going to be the same visual clarity and graphical fidelity as playing it on Rift. Rift is always going to be the best experience. I'm sorry to say that, but that is going to be the case.
There is a material issue in this space at the moment, because the majority of trailers that I've seen have been composited and captured with a Rift, not a Quest. and then promoted at that level of fidelity. And when you get into the headset, the lower fi scenes, even some frame rate stutter in places, like when you feel that, you're like, oh, I am on a mobile power headset, and you notice it. Now, I'm not saying that it's not a cool headset, and like you, to call it your darling, like it's the two guns Wild Wild West. Like, I definitely want to be part of this ride, and I think that a lot of people, if they had to make a choice, would probably end up going Quest instead of Rift S if they're going to put their $400 on the table.
I do agree with you that right now the marketing, especially here on PAX, they are doing is kind of lacking in a way where there is no real difference between what these two headsets are. And it's funny that after I tried the Quest demo, they were asking me, hey, you want to do a survey? It's like, yeah, sure. So I went into this survey, and they had like an iPad laying around, and it was asking me like, do you know what an all-in-one gaming headset is? And I got the option to pick an Oculus Quest, an Oculus Rift S, stuff like that. So they are very, very concerned that people don't know the difference. And I'm afraid that that's actually the truth. And even more interesting is that they don't only do it after people try demos, but they also do it at the giveaway booth there, where they ask people, what do we have here? Is this an all-in-one gaming headset, or is this a inside-out tracking PC headset? And then they can win stuff. But honestly, if you're not going to reach like an overall thought by with people what these two headsets are by doing it at PAX, because PAX is not the source of what this headset is going to be and what people think about it. So I don't know what they are doing, but we all know that the Rift S was like a quick thing that came out. This is not something they have been like working on for years. They have been working together with Lenovo. They bought their blueprint and they worked together to bring it out. And now the Quest has been has been in development for a while, and now these two need to suddenly be out there together. I wish they went for a more separate way, because right now consumers seem to be confusing.
And I think it will.
Confused.
They're going to be kind of confused that way. And the other thing I was going to say here was, in terms of the marketing strategy, I think it comes down to dev tools. Like giving devs the ability to capture in the same way that you give creators to capture is I think, at the base of this, because we've talked to development teams who've had to just compromise, code their game to be able to capture all those kinds of things. And I think that this problem will resolve itself, but for that initial wave of inductees, they might be in for a little bit of a hard lesson.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I think so. And I keep on seeing it again and again in comments, like, will I be able to connect the Quest to Steam VR? That's not going to happen. Will I be able to play Stormland or Asgard's Wrath on the Quest? That's not going to happen either. However, I'm pleased to say that, games like Beat Saber, games like Dance Central, they look great on Quest. They play great on Quest. And, now, finally, today is the first time that we've actually been able to capture Quest gameplay on the headset, just like you can with the Go, with game audio, and we're going to be able to share that on our YouTube channel. So you will finally be able to see actual recorded footage from a Quest on YouTube. So that's great.
And I think, like, from our perspective, I'm sure we can kind of, make clear to, VR enthusiasts, but also consumers, what the difference is. But Oculus also needs to pull it off, because otherwise people are gonna buy the wrong headset, puts them off, kills the sales straight away. Some people buy a headset once, they're like, I'm not gonna bother again. I don't think people are gonna buy the Quest first and they're like, well, that's not what I was looking for, and then they buy the other one. That's not gonna happen. It's a one-time buy, and if it then doesn't work, then it's kind of over.
This is actually this is weird. I tended to stay away from the poisoning the well wording back in the DK1, DK2 days with all the cheap headsets out there that weren't at that grade. But now I'm wondering a little bit, if someone gets into a Quest, it's not meeting their expectations, and then they turn away from VR. I'm not sure, because on the flip side, and I know we've talked a little bit counter to the Quest for the introduction here, which I don't think necessarily matches all of our, if we all said, hands up if you're excited about the Quest and you're really keen on owning one, I think we'd all have hands in the air. I mean, I was playing hardcore Expert Plus Beat Saber, and it tracked everything. It was keeping up with me, and I was like super impressed at that. I think even in Quest tracking across the board, I've lost it maybe 3 times within a reasonable distance. It's not exactly the same as Rift S, but it's, if Rift S tracking is 95% of the time accurate, Quest is 90%. Like it's a very small grade difference I find between the two.
You know, the only thing that kind of saves the Rift S right now and the Quest to be like separate is because they worked with Lenovo and they had to kind of compromise on design, so you can finally see the difference. But if they almost look the same, like a lot of people wanted, we would have a bigger issue, because right now you can still kind of see the difference if you buy it. But seriously, if they don't change the packaging and stuff and they put them next to each other, it's gonna be a little. I don't know what's gonna happen.
That's a really interesting point, because I always wanted the Rift S to look like Quest, but you make a really, really good point that when it's on the shelves together, if they look the same, there would be nothing to distinguish them, and it would confuse consumers even more. So it's
the one with the blue light. Rift S is the one with the blue light. Quest, no blue light.
Yeah.
But still, Oculus does need to educate people. They have to do it. And it's not only here in America, because, you know, usually when they have a new product, they bring it to Best Buy, they bring it to all the stores, and you can check it out. But in Europe, for example, I never see that stuff. So if they are smart, they tour around like HTC did with the Vive back then. They had this big, you know, truck, and they were driving around the country, and they also advertised it everywhere so people could sign up and stuff like that. I think that would be a good point. Or in terms of what PlayStation VR does, is that you can have this app and you can sign up for a demo. And if they build that into the app where it's like you can choose this all-in-one gaming headset or one for your PC, then people can also kind of try what they are interested in. But now, people standing in line, but I don't think most people know really what they are going to try and if it's hooked up to a PC or not. I don't think so.
From what my experiences go, because I walked through the lines a couple of times and spoke to a couple of people there, and they didn't know what they were going to try. For many, this was their first time ever trying VR anyway.
I'm so scared of that, Mike. Throughout the convention today, I'd say the majority of people I've spoken with, who are obviously here for gaming reasons, they're like, oh, I know about it, I've heard about it, it seems cool, I've just yet never tried. And I'm like, dude, just get in that fucking queue now. Yeah. Get in that queue now. Like, I still don't understand how that is like allowable in our culture. I want to find a way to like force people into VR. Can we do that?
The great thing though is like Oculus have a huge presence here at PAX. You know, they've got the main stage, center of the show floor, these two great big booths, Oculus and Facebook Gaming. And, you know, there are other sort of VR experiences dotted around the show floor, but it's right in the middle. Oh, okay, PlayStation's right next door as well. So, yeah. And that's really great to see, you know, all this VR on the show floor. But like you say, I still feel from the general feeling of the people at the show, they still haven't played VR or tried it.
You can clearly see that here, how they built these two booths, you know, that they're trying to separate it, but then still people don't really know. Plus, you know, the problem is that the Rift S, you can see what people are playing, but with the Oculus Quest, you can't, because there is no casting. They had this iPad at Oculus Connect, you know, with Dead and Buried, so you could look through the iPad as a portal and see what people were playing. If they did that here, and they put like maybe a TV on like the window of someone playing, and you could see them, and you could look through this portal, and you make this as a marketing thing. Maybe I should do the marketing of Oculus. I don't know.
I remember us highlighting this point to, it was Palmer Luckey, I think, at the time we were talking to him about it, and John, and it was like seeing it now years later, maturing into the same problem of VR is a shared experience. Naturally, people like it as this like spectator thing, like I'm going to watch this dude do it, and then I get excited, and the mirror neurons in your brain are firing off, and you're like, I need to beat Saber. I've never done this before. So I'm really keen on like the show presence. Fantastic to see that. Not all cons are created equally. Mike and I haven't seen UK Rezzed and been quite disappointed. There are other cons where there's like almost no presence. Here, you're talking Central Park VR at PAX. The other thing that they've done that I want to highlight, because PAX have done a wonderful thing, it's been known the barrier to entry, if you're excited about VR and you want to get into it, has been a 3-hour wait on average in past PAX years. They've created a Vive and Rift VR free play area, which have queues of about 20 minutes. And there's about, I would estimate, maybe 35 to 40 booths. You just go in, you play what you want from a selection of like 8 to 10 titles on whichever headset you want. There's literally a Rift queue and a Vive queue. And you just get in line, you go play. That's not being advertised as much as I hope it would. So if you happen to be catching this, let's say on Saturday, you coming in on Sunday, get to that spot, because you will be able to go through for a couple of runs within an hour or two, you know, and before you would have been standing waiting like you were at a theme park going on a big ride.
I agree. Like compared to Gamescom, E3 and stuff like that, they have the best presence. Although I still think they should use an app. So people that are really interested in trying it can just sign up for a demo, and you can, on the PlayStation VR, you can like really choose what you want to play. Like in this case, people stand in line for a while, they get a random demo because they can't pick. It's like you get in there and then they pick one for you. So let's say you're a shooter dude and you're going to play some kind of weird ass, I don't know, fun game, then that's not really appealing to you. You know what I mean? So I feel like even that they are here, and dude, it's amazing to see. It's beautiful. They can use these spaces better. They can advertise it better. And because in the long run, it's going to pay off. And we'll see, when these headsets launch, we're going to see how much confusion there is. And I already see it on my channel too. I see these comments like, hey, but can I still play my Oculus Rift games on my Oculus Rift S? And that's a VR enthusiast we're talking about. This is not even a consumer we're talking about.
I'm really confused that you're like love for the app. I hate mobile app queuing where it's like pick a time, then remember to be there at that time.
No,
I'm more of a, like, I'd rather queue for 20 minutes than book that way. So just, can you explain that a bit?
I mean, what I'm saying here is that the people that are really interested in trying, if they see the booth and they have this poster of saying like, hey, if you want to have a demo, you can sign up. Then you have a bigger success rate of people, maybe buying the headset, because there's so many people that stand in line for VR demos that, they just wanted to try it, so they know they don't really want to, get it yet. Every year, people are like, maybe I should try it again. Maybe it's better now. And they're like, yeah, I don't know. I'm going to wait a little longer. That's what at Gamescom happens at E3. People just stand there so they don't have to buy it, but still try it.
I still think like going to events like this is the best place to try VR for the first time if you haven't tried it before, because going into stores, we still have zero retail presence there. So, this is the best place, or find a friend that's got one and try it out. But let's quickly talk about Quest tracking, because and compare it maybe to Rift S tracking, because there is a difference. And I think, like you said, maybe Rift S was 95%, Quest was 90%, and you said you had some controller loss of tracking in Quest.
Yeah, one of the things that I noticed the most was frame stutter. Yeah. Frame stutter, moving left to right, panning, where it jumps, like in Dance Central, jumped quite a bit, only a few times, but it was enough that it was a discernible thing where you're kind of getting the feeling of that lower quality bar. Wasn't going to impact my gameplay. Like I said, I can't believe that they've managed to create the technology that allows you to play. I can't imagine a game that's a harder stress test than Beat Saber on Expert Plus. And to be able to do that, I've never beaten an Expert Plus track yet. If you do, you're a legend. I have not managed. But to be able to go a third of the way through the track, that's as far as I've gotten so far in KDA, and for it to keep up with me, I'm super impressed. I mean, we are leagues ahead of PSVR tracking, and I think PSVR is fine. This is, like, if I was to say PSVR is at a setting of, let's say, like 80, as I said, this is up at 90. Like, it's a chunk better. It's not quite at Rift with 3 cameras. And in between that and Quest, you've got Rift S.
Yeah, and I also noticed playing Beat Saber that there is very, very slight latency.
Yes.
Very slight.
Very slight.
So with Rift and Vive, if you're used to playing Beat Saber on those systems, you're used to the very fast latency of those controllers being tracked. With Quest, there is latency there. It doesn't hinder the experience. You can still play on Expert. I still played on Expert in my demo. I'm not good enough to play on Expert Plus in general on any headset, so I couldn't say if it held up to that. Hats off to use him. But yeah, there's a little bit of latency there, but in terms of the overall experience is there.
That latency to me feels constant. I'll compare it to when I'm streaming Beat Saber and my system's under load because I use one PC. It's that amount of latency compared to me doing it offline. It's about, if I was to guess, I'd say like 30 milliseconds or something. It's quite subtle, like 30 to 60. But it's there constantly. So you adapt to it naturally. And actually, oh my God, it feels amazing. Like, you know what I did? You know the trailer, how they've got the people spinning around? I was doing that, man. I swear, if you haven't done that, do it. It's magical to spin in place, get a block, get the next block. Feels good.
So what you guys are talking about here is like the delay between your actual hand holding the controller and the one you see in the game, and because it kind of sounds like that when you're talking about it.
It's really not that exaggerated, and I'm talking
it's
like
not like you're dragging your controller along and you see it kind of there. It's like come here.
It's not like a Wiimote.
No way. It's just that you're making such a fast movement that you just notice that there's a very, very slight delay That's all it is.
But I mean, it was the same with the PlayStation VR, you know, with the light tracking, and you could still have fun. And I saw people playing Expert Plus too, and they just, you know, nail it.
I'm on the other side of the fence for PlayStation, because I think if you get into Expert or Expert Plus mode on PlayStation, tracking's not good enough for that, because you get to the point where you're perfecting a song, you're 3/4 of the way through, and you miss a beat because the tracking blips. And I have noticed that consistently on PSVR. So we are not in PSVR territory for tracking. We are much better than that.
Well, the proof is on YouTube. If you want to look it up, people nail it.
They can't.
So it's possible. If you have the right setup, you can do it. But you know, tracking-wise, I did feel like I had a less of a good experience compared to Oculus Connect when the first time I tried it, but that's because they use a different floor than they used at Oculus Connect, because at Oculus Connect you had this gray concrete floor and they had some lines, but I don't know if that was really a part of the whole. Maybe it was. Maybe I think they used like these white lines to kind of line out what's going on. But here they use these boots with reflective like floors. They are reflecting because of the lights they have on there. So I did notice with some casual games that sometimes your hand's kind of stuck and you need to pull it back. But again, it works good enough. That's what it is.
And I think, you know, because I went to Coatsink and I tried it in their room, which was just a normal room, normal carpet, normal furniture, and I had the best experience with Quest tracking there than I have on a show floor. And like you said, like, although my tracking experience here at PAX was better than at OC5, I still had some issues. So I think it's going to be more suited to a home environment than a show floor.
I mean, I just have to say this. For us, and I think the majority of our time with Quest, we've been in glass boxes, like booth babes. And I just wanted to highlight that fact, because we've all achieved a level of permeation into conventions now that I just don't want to back down from, you know. I'm proud booth babe.
You're a proud booth babe. Yeah, absolutely.
So you guys, like what you're talking about, like the tracking, you tried it in those spots, like they have these sealed off places where you can play. Like I played it at consumer level, so I played in the booths where consumers go to where they stand in line.
But it's still glass, isn't it? There's still glass.
Yeah. But it's a different like floor. I do feel like, you know, reflective floors are not the best thing. Like, you know, blocking out light in the first place that comes out of a window. I think that's a necessity to kind of, you know, try to avoid that, even with a Quest.
I wonder, I will ask the Oculus team if they would permit me to go into daylight with the headset and just give it a go. Because I'm really
there is no way they're going to let you leave this building with one of those headsets in your hand. I guarantee it. Yeah.
Put a clamp on my leg.
There is no way, like a leash, like a baby leash.
Yeah, I'll do it.
But is there anything else you guys want to talk about Quest in terms of your experience? Like, we could maybe talk about the comfort very quickly, because it uses the same strap as the original Rift, which, in my opinion, was always the most comfortable.
It's a little. The only thing I would say is a little bit different, a little bit more rubbery in terms of the back strap, so it's not as solid. One thing I haven't tried, I'll try this afternoon, is laying down on that carpet that we're on, just to see. Can
I just watch this when this happens, please?
Absolutely, you can watch it, Mike. But I'm just wondering, because the big selling point for me on the go again is lying down comfort and the ability to reposition in that position. I just wonder if you can, because remember they were talking about 20/80, then 80/20 on the Quest. I wonder if you could ingest media on this device, or if it's only sitting up on your couch if you were going to do it. You know, I'm really curious about that, especially with the, you know, improved storage, because someone might say, hey, I sit up on my couch. I want this headset for gaming every so often, but actually I'm more of a 50-50 guy or gal, and I actually consume media as well, because that might be an important thing. And if you're going to go for 128, gigabyte edition, you might want to sideload some movies.
Yeah. So yeah, comfort's pretty good. Tracking's good.
What I do want to see in the near future is that I noticed that most of the games that are getting announced right now are Quest titles, and that's awesome. But the thing is, because, you know, the Quest and the Rift SR can be parted so easily now in terms of games, I just don't want to see only Quest games coming to the PC platform, because there is still a difference between the genre PC VR games and the standalone VR games.
Yeah, you make a really good point. Like Asgard's Wrath and Stormland are good examples. You know, they're PC games. They're never going to be on standalone. Well, Not in the foreseeable future anyway, maybe a few years time, yes, but right now, no. And when you look at those games, like graphically, they are gorgeous. Like some of the most impressive graphics I've seen in a VR game yet. Stormland in particular, like that game is incredible.
But also mechanics wise, it's not just about the graphics. It's like you can do more you can have more interaction, things like that. It feels more alive.
A larger environment, for instance. It's what I would call the old kind of Crytek engine challenge of I want to see a vast expanse in front of me, and I don't want it to just be in cell shaded low poly. I want like a rich environment. Yeah. You can't really do that on the Quest. Yeah. Although I know where you're going.
Cell shaded low poly, Dance Central,
and Journey of the Gods.
Journey
of the Gods are both really satisfying titles.
Yeah. And we should probably talk about that. So the demos on the show floor we got to try on Quest were Beat Saber, Journey of the Gods, Sports Scramble, and Dance Central. And on Rift S, we could play Asgard's Wrath, Stormland, or Dance Central. So they're the demos we had access to. Maybe we should choose one each to talk about. And as I started with Dance Central, maybe I should choose that one. But yeah, in terms of like its art style, it's cell shaded, right? A bit like Borderlands. And we know from playing Borderlands 2 on the PSVR, that art style works incredibly well in VR. And I wish more developers would adopt it because I think it looks great.
It performs great. Yeah, it looks great.
Exactly. And so in Dance Central, it's clear that Audica was Harmonix's little side baby because they were clearly working on this one hardcore because this has got a really high level of polish. If you're used to playing Dance Central games on like Kinect or like with other systems, you're gonna love this. Like the lineup is pretty decent in terms of music, and like I was really getting into it, and like it must be embarrassing because it's a bit like Beat Saber, you feel like in the headset, you feel like you're doing amazing. You're like, oh yeah.
Oh, it's well worse, Mike. We were watching.
Oh, well, there you go. I could be rocking up to the club and like breaking out these moves, but in reality, you do look like a bit of an idiot, but that's fine because I was having such a great time. And I think this, alongside Beat Saber, is one of those great party games with the Quest. Take it around to a friend's house, have a few beers, swap the headset over, all have like just a right laugh playing this game. So I don't know, what games do you guys want to talk about?
I just want to say one thing about Dance Central. As a long-time Dance Central player, it felt a little bit creepy to be that close to the dancer in front of me and like mimicking her movements and stuff. It just felt a little bit socially awkward. But one thing that they did in that game that we have to highlight, because I think it's a very wise choice from a GUI perspective, they have you take out a mobile phone or a cell phone and you just interact with that. And it's like cheating because it's just a 2D menu, but they put it on a phone and you're like, oh, sweet. I'm just going to navigate, chuck it back there, keep going. So smart. Harmonix, great job. Game I wanted to talk about, Asgard's Wrath, because you hyped me up for this, as usual. When you respect someone's opinion, and then they like with Vertigo last week. I don't know if you heard that. Good recommendation, by the way, Nathan. Vertigo's great. We got to see that come onto Quest, I hope, if they're willing to port it. Asgard's Wrath, not so much for let's say the story mode where you do a boss battle and you've got this Kraken coming at you. I mean, impressive to a degree, but as my gamer in me says, too simple. Very boxed, very, triggered events, and it's like, it doesn't excite me. The combat in the kind of gladiator ring system, few things there that really impressed me. Off the bat, I'm a big Magic the Gathering player. People who play Magic will know who Sarah Angel is. You essentially have this Xena-esque, Queen of Blades, wings, angel that comes down, descends before you. You have a beating heart that you must sacrifice to this woman. Her armor and all that. I mean, not only is she a looker, she looks great. The armor, the detail, it's coming through the headset. It's like, this is a very impressive moment. And she's quite big. She's like 1.5 humans tall. You sacrifice the heart to her, and then boom, the kind of undead orcs or whatever come up out of the ground and start attacking you. And the first thing they do is they throw a blade at your face. And if you've got good reactions, you're like, duh, and you block with a shield or something that you've picked up. And then through the shield, the blade comes halfway through, a piece falls off the shield, and you're like, holy shit, what's going on? And then you grab your blade and you're hacking him, and then you cut the guy in half like something out of, Game of Thrones or something. Like, that moment was like, oh shit, this is pretty good. And I was dancing, fucking demo people here at Oculus, they tricked me. For an hour, I was hammering it, jumping around the room, trying to kill, the final boss basically in this ring, and only to realize he was unkillable. So whoever made that design choice for demos, feck you. But it was a beautiful experience, and I hope everyone gets excited for it. So I hope, because you guys know how much I like Skyrim, I hope they have a single player that is at least convincing. Even if it's linear, those combat mechanics, the ability to slice someone's arm off and then hit their opponents with it, heads as well, by the way, you can do bowling. I've done it. Beautiful. Really well done. The physics are solid. And to be able to play that game on Rift S, it looks great, like you said, just like Stormland.
Yeah, I think with Asgard's Wrath, it was one of those games that I just thought was challenging, but in the best possible way. So it's going to be really difficult to get into the game. You're going to have to learn the parrying mechanics, using a shield, using your melee weapons effectively. You've also got an axe that you can throw.
It comes back. It's a boomerang axe. It's a magical boomerang axe that goes out and comes back like Xena's little Shikara or whatever.
Exactly. And you're going to have to learn how to be good at this game. But then when you are good at it and you finally do nail that sort of like kill where you're slicing an enemy in half or taking their head off, the satisfaction is like, hell yeah, I nailed this. And that's what's really great about it. But of course, we didn't really get to see much of the story other than that Kraken boss fight, which again, I kind of share your opinion about. I thought it was very scripted and a bit, I was more interested in the melee combat.
So we're still having to find out if in the long run, if you play this for like maybe 8 hours, it's still that fun as at the start. Exactly.
And the thing is, Oculus and Sanzaru Games are both sort of touting, this is a 30-hour game. This is a 30-hour game. So I'm really intrigued how they stretch this content out to keep us engaged for 30 hours.
Yeah, and I hope it's not just a bunch of pinch points on a timeline of scripted set. Now scripted set. Now, like if there is some open world-esque, even if it's limited, like Fable or something like that. Like even if it's like somewhat restricted, I would go for that. It doesn't have to be completely Skyrim, like open world, but that's I'm very interested in.
It already looks more appealing to me than Marvel Powers United, so I feel like they did a way better job, and I think they're heading into the right direction. So I'm gonna keep it short because I haven't played that much. I've been running around talking to people. I still have to get like more hands on with the the Quest and the Rift. Also to point out, Dance Central is a Quest game. Although I do feel like that might come to PC as well. Could work.
It is
on PC too.
But the build here, like I was cautioned not to play it because it's not working perfectly. So it is also PC.
I didn't know that, but that's good to hear. And Asgard's Wrath is a PC VR title. You can't play that with the Quest. Just to try. I'm trying to educate people while we're doing this podcast.
Doing Oculus's job for them.
Yeah, I've been doing a great job so far, right? I mean. Yes. Yeah, so I played Journey of the Gods on the Quest. It's great. It's like this cartoony art style. It reminds you of like Zelda, the Wind Waker game, and it's super badass. I do want to play it again at home because we are using these inbuilt audio right now, and I can barely hear what's going on. But it's fun, I was laughing a little bit, and the animations were super cute, and it's an awesome title. I think it's one of the best ones they have here on the show floor.
I think people are gonna love that title. I'm glad you picked it because isn't this the one that they were talking about? Someone had said earlier they're like, this is gonna be like Zelda-esque, and I think there were a lot of opinion pieces that were saying, it's probably not gonna be like Zelda, but it is. It definitely is feeling like Zelda. Like you've been dropped into the world. And some of the bad guys you fight in that, like large, like dune worms, pop up out of the ground, and it's colorful. And as you said, Mike, they do the cell shading really well in that game. So I actually think out of the 3 titles we mentioned, that might end up being like a fan favorite because you know how people latch on to things like Zelda that give you that vibe. I also got kind of a twinge of Windlands kind of flavor in it as well. So it's that kind of like little bit of Zen, little bit of combat. It's a good game.
Yeah, like you have the choice. You've got like a sword, you've got a shield, which looks like the Hylian shield from Zelda. Like it's got the same band on it. It's identical.
And the best thing is you can become like in Asgard. You can become like a giant too. Exactly. You can become like a god, and you can switch between that. And they had smooth locomotion. They had teleportation. No, they didn't. They don't do teleportation at all. They go for completely. And I said it might be for some people, but I think it's the way forward. Of course,
you can choose at the beginning.
No, you can't teleport. I asked them.
Okay.
I said, like, can I teleport? They're like, no, we're not gonna do that anymore because these bosses are shooting stuff at you, and you have all these creatures, and teleportation kind of killed the experience. They said, but it's good to hear that developers are trying to also move on now because teleportation is slowly, I feel like, kind of fading away. But yeah, no, it's awesome, and in this title was really nice also for people that don't have that much space because not everyone who's gonna buy a Quest is going to have that much space. So it was also a good standing experience. You didn't, in this one, you could just stand on one spot and use your thumbstick to run around.
Awesome. So is there anything else you guys want to talk about, Rift S or Quest, before we wrap this one up? Feels kind of weird without having a live audience now. It's not like I can ask people, like, what, you got any questions?
Stare into their soul for a minute, Mike, and just be like, if you've got a question, put it in chat now.
Yeah. I'm sure we'll try and be in the chat whilst this show's being aired. But anything else you guys want to add before we wrap it up?
I mean, I just think that big looming question of if you had $400, which one would you be buying? If you were a consumer, walked in off the street, demoed here, you tried both. Frankly, which one of those two headsets would you choose?
Okay, so if you own a powerful enough PC. Exactly. If you own a powerful enough PC, Rift S is the way to go. If you don't, then Quest is the obvious choice. So that is the only key factor in making that decision in my mind. Yeah.
I would say wait for the reviews and see.
Yeah.
Because there are so many nice headsets out there. In the standalone genre, Quest, there aren't many options. It's only the Quest right now, but PC-wise, there are many more headsets that you should consider at the moment next to the Rift S.
Because, and I agree wholeheartedly with you, Nathan, because I think that the game lineup on Quest, which is still not fully out there, we know a lot of titles that are coming, but things like playing the Battle Royale mode of Rec Room on Quest might be amazing. To physically duck in a bush in your room or whatever and play that. There's like 50 odd titles. So software might swing my needle over to recommend Quest in that decision, even if you've got the PC for it.
Yeah. No, it's a really valid point. And Vader Immortal, we still don't know if that's coming to Rift yet, so that might be a Quest exclusive.
And the Respawn title.
And the Respawn title that's coming to Rift S might swing it the other way. So there's loads of things to consider in the future. It's really cool, actually. It's a really great time for us because we've got so much content to talk about, so much stuff to be excited about, loads of games to play. It's going to be a very busy few months ahead for us, I think. But we're going to have an absolute blast doing it. We're going to be sharing it, of course, on all our channels and stuff, and I'll always keep you informed on the podcast as well.
Just before we close up, Mike, the one thing that I think surprised all of us, no news, nor formal celebration of the 3rd anniversary. It was kind of an odd vacate, point. What was up with this vacuum? That was strange.
One word, F8.
Yeah, exactly. The thing is,
forget the anniversary, F8.
I said that, I originally said it was F8, and then I thought Rift S might launch on the anniversary while we're all here, so we can all run to Best Buy and just take one home in our luggage, but that's not the case.
Saw you going to the dark side for one moment. It's like, birthday. This must be one of the conspiracies, I
was convinced, but that's not the case. Sadly, we're going to have to wait a little bit longer. I think the release date is one of the biggest questions for everyone right now.
I know it. Spring.
Spring 2019 is going to be burned into our minds for years to come. I think the time that we waited forever for spring, but yeah,
I can tell you it's going to be F8. I'm going to give you one reason why. Mark Zuckerberg needs to hold this Oculus Quest, needs to hold this Oculus Rift S, because it will create more noise in the end.
Well, there you go. It's going to be like F8, likely. So if you don't know when that is, that's 30th of April to the 1st of May, I believe. But let's wrap up the show. Just a reminder, this is a weekly VR, AR, and MR talk show, live streamed every Saturday on YouTube, Facebook, and on Twitch. You can tune into the show live at 7 p.m. in Europe, 6 p.m. in the UK, and 12 midday in Central US. Also, check out the audio version available on iTunes, SoundCloud, and on Anchor. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed this one. We're going to be home by next episode, so we'll be back in our usual surroundings, live streaming with Rowdy again, of course. Hope Rowdy has had a great time. He's been doing some sort of ceremony for getting married, so hats off to him. We've missed him, actually. It's been a shame to not have him here with us. But yeah, have a great week in VR. We'll see you next week, and until then, bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye. Ciao.